in temperature, the crop duration might get reduced by 4 to 5 days.
We can able to feel that we are in an alarming situation.
The responsibility as well as the challenge lies really with vernacular media.
எதிர்காலத்துல பாத்தீங்கன்னா என்ன பருவநிலை மாற்ற அகதிகள் அப்படிங்கறதே வந்துரும்.
Media person can play a greater role to inform the people.
ஒரு climate changeன்றது புதுசு கிடையாது.
We the media experience it ourselves. Our stories will have that much more impact and that much more will go across to our readers.
People will not be able to act on what scientists tell them because the media is the conduit which takes science to the public. So it contributes to public understanding of science. Hello, I'm Dr. Radhika Mittal. Climate change today is a global problem. It's the poster child for a global environmental problem. It is a global crisis that has taken over every nation in the world. It's no longer something that is restricted to scientific laboratories. It has come out of the open and has become a story that needs to be told in real time. The media have a very important role to play in this. The media need to transmit this story with all its angles and appropriate subjects and topics into the public space, because people will only believe and work and act on what the media tells them. People will not be able to act on what scientists tell them because the media is the conduit which takes science to the public. So it contributes to public understanding of science. Climate change today has become an issue that is being covered globally by media across the world. There are different frames and angles to this coverage. Some countries have reported skeptical sort of coverage around climate change. There's scientific uncertainty, even though the science is very, very certain on climate change. 99% scientists attest that climate change is anthropogenic, it is caused by human activity, it is a serious threat and needs to be tackled. We need to keep temperature rises below 2 degrees Celsius because it will affect a lot of human patterns and ecological concerns. So, what do the global media say about climate change? Earlier in the US, the climate change coverage was very skeptical in nature. There was scientific uncertainty. Today, the tone of coverage is more towards technological utopia, which means the US media are trying to say that even though climate change is happening, we can tackle it by developing technology and using it to balance out or counter the impacts of climate change. In countries like UK, the discourse is very politicized. It's about the kind of political ideology that the newspaper holds, and they cover climate change from that angle, whether they're right or left of center or any other political affiliation. In places like Australia, there has been, historically at least, a distanciation from the issue of climate change. So climate change is something that is happening far away and is not impacting us at a personal, intimate level. This is a complex discourse because people will not be able to understand the impacts of climate change if it is kept so far away from them. In Indian media, there has been very little research on how Indian media covers climate change, but some of it points to a risk-responsibility divide, which says that the Indian setup did not contribute so much to climate change. Developing economies did not have much to do with it. So the developed world, which contributed majorly to the development of climate change, should tackle it. So there is risk to India, but the responsibility lies with the West to manage it. In India, the framing of climate change is also interesting because there is scientific certainty around climate change. There is no questioning the science. There are some frames that talk about economic challenges and energy challenges. Some frames talk about social progress, how do we develop as a society. And some frames do have an imminent disaster, looming disaster kind of a frame. India is already experiencing many impacts of climate change. Whether or not we label it as climate change, it is definitely related in some way to the global warming effect. We have seen a lot of natural disasters, from floods and landslides, etc. Crops like wheat, corn, and rice cannot withstand even a 2-degree rise in temperature. So all of a sudden we will have huge crop losses. We already have fights over water resources. We've noticed that states are divided over how water, who has access to which water resource. So water wars will lead to civil wars, as some scientists have predicted. Food shortages will lead to an enormous amount of hunger and poverty. There will be large-scale displacement of people, with people migrating from their parts of the world to other parts of the country or world to gain access to resources. Unfortunately, all of this affects the poorest the most. On coastal regions, you have the issues of sea level rise. We also have problems with deforestation, with human-animal conflict. There is not a single area of our life in which we are not experiencing the impacts of climate change. We have produced so much waste that waste is coming back to haunt us. We've got pharmaceuticals being dumped into rivers, and these have made human beings resistant to antibiotics. We have electronic waste, we have a problem with segregation of waste. Climate change is a story that is interconnected. It affects us in virtually every way. It cannot be a singular story on its own, because a single climate change story has the potential to distance people, because climate change is something happening out there. But if you have water, paucity of water or scarcity of water, it's affecting you right here. So find out what affects local people, make the stories local, intimate, personalized, suggest solutions that communities can actually take up, because your objectivity is being actually fueled by somebody else's subjective agendas. Big corporate lobbies, big government officials, all of these people have a stake in keeping things at the status quo. So as a journalist, you have to go and shake that. To shake that, you have to do independent research, and you have to get behind the emotions and understanding of what's happening in everyday lives with everyday people. We should realize that 51% of greenhouse gas emissions are caused by producing and consuming animal-based foods. We should realize that non-organic, non-ecological agriculture is leading to a depletion of fertility in soil. So if, as journalists, we bring these things out into the open, perhaps communities will be encouraged to produce and consume their food differently. Similarly, we need to talk about water and energy. We use firewood and certain methods for cooking, which are now very detrimental to the environment. They are throwing out pollution into the air, and you notice that some parts of this country are very polluted, and that is because of these small particles that are released into the air by burning firewood. Please remember, at one time there were less people, the resources were abundant. Today we have more people and the resources are not as abundant. We have species and biodiversity loss. Huge animals will start getting wiped out. Huge animal populations of large animals, mammalians and primates are going to get wiped out. Public health is a very important factor in climate change, and it can be used to motivate a lot of people to change their lifestyles. So if you talk about food, water, energy, usage of energy, switching to more renewable energy sources, coal is a problem, but we still have a huge coal lobby that allows us to continue digging up and ruining our hills. The media needs to go back to tribals and indigenous people and bring back ancient wisdom. The kind of wisdom that will help us actually revise our practices and live ecologically and sustainably. Tribal wisdom has a lot of benefit for saving ecological resource. We have all these things with us, but we're just not utilizing them correctly.